Welcome in, everybody. Spreads and Subs, episode 16. Today is May 28th, 2024, Tuesday. And we're back today to give you 10 more picks, cutting it down to 3 best bets, as we usually do on the show. But before we get into how we did yesterday, I want to give a quick shout out to Bet Openly for sponsoring the show. Shout out to Bet Openly, the best odds in the game. Sign up with Bet Openly and deposit $50. Send me a screenshot of proof on Twitter at JReidNBA. That's JReidNBA on Twitter. And I will be able to enter you into a giveaway for some cash. That's JReidNBA on Twitter, and I will get you into a giveaway for some cash. Shout out to Bet Openly for the best odds in the game. Yesterday, we did not have an ideal day. We go 1-2 overall. Tough day in MLB. We went about even in NBA. Honestly, I hate to say it, we should have went 2-1. Peyton Pritchard, we had his over 7.5 points. He got into the game, only played 9 minutes. I think that is a playoff low for him. Came out of nowhere. He scores 5 points. He had the shot for the 8 points, misses the 3, unfortunately. Comes back into the game for like 2 minutes in the third quarter, and then we never see him again. So 9 minutes was just absolutely brutal, and he still almost covered it, but we still get the TJ McConnell under assists, and then we sadly lost the Guardians against the Rockies. But we're back today with 10 more picks. If you're new to the show, I give 10 picks a day. We cut it down. I pick my favorite 3 of those 10, and those are the 3 that we're tracking. On YouTube, you can see in the top right corner, there is our record on the show for the best bets, which is those 3 every episode. We are at 22 and 23 after 45 picks. And then this week, just including yesterday, we are 1-2. So moving on here, we will start off with NBA. I have 5 NBA picks, 2 WNBA picks, and 3 MLB picks for you today. We will start off with the Wolves-Mavericks NBA Game 4. With the Mavericks leading 3-0 in the series. I'm going to go with the Wolves money line. I went back and forth on this game. I actually had the Mavs at first, -1.5. But the more I looked at it and the more I looked at some of the player props, I'm like, damn, I kind of think that the Wolves are going to fight in this one. And I just can't imagine them just rolling over and getting swept here. I think they just have too much pride to get swept. Dallas is going to be up 3-0. They are more experienced than Minnesota, of course, but they're also not the most experienced team in the playoffs outside of Kyrie. I think they could definitely let off the gas here up 3-0. And Ant, I think, is just going to go off in this game. I'll get into him a little bit later. I've been very critical of him because he was so hyped up early on in the playoffs. In the last, 7 games, he has not been great. But I think he's going to have at least a decent night with his back against the wall here in Game 4 in Dallas. So first bet here is Wolves money line. Sorry, YouTube didn't pull that down on the screen, but here we go. Second bet. Wolves, Mavs, over 210.5. This is covered in all 3 of the games this series. Regardless of the Wolves' defense, they're going to need to score to win this game, absolutely. Dallas is too good offensively that even Minnesota's defense isn't going to be able to stop them from scoring at least probably 110, which means Minnesota's going to have to score to compete with them. They're going to have to shoot a lot of threes, and it's going to have to take a shit ton of shots, and they're going to need to score. So I think this over should hit for the 4th time this series pretty easily. There's also been a ton of free throws this series, which, of course, in turn leads to a ton of scoring overall. The more free throws that we're going to see in this series, the more points we're going to see, and I think that trend continues tonight in Dallas. So Wolves money line and Wolves Mavs over 210.5 are our first 2 here. Moving on to the third one, I got 3 player props now. Naz Reid over 12.5. This is covered in every single game this series as well. He's averaging 17 per game in this series. Dallas is just a good matchup for him overall. He's a big that can stretch the floor. You don't really want a guy like Gobert on the three-point line guarding him. You want Gobert at the rim. Naz Reid should get a lot of three-point attempts tonight. And like I said, he's covered this 12.5 in all 3 games. Line is low. I don't know if they're just expecting more guard play from Minnesota in this one. I guess that's probably why. But regardless, I still like Naz Reid over 12.5. Moving on, and I'm realizing now all 3 of my player props here are from the Timberwolves. So next one here, Kyle Anderson, over 5.5 points. This is covered in all 3 games this series. Role players just need to play good for Minnesota to be able to compete in this one, and that's why I'm taking him and Naz Reid for their points on the overs. Overall, this Minnesota team just cannot afford to have Cat and Ant be all of their points. They need their role players to come through and do some of the dirty work for them, especially on the offensive end. He's averaging 9.3 points a game this series. Kyle Anderson is his line sits just at 5.5. He hasn't been great the entire playoffs, but this series he's figured it out, and he's been phenomenal this series. So, well, phenomenal for Kyle Anderson standards, but regardless, he's averaging 9.3 per game this series. We're taking that over 5.5. Next one here, last NBA bet of the day. Anthony Edwards over 27.5 plus 105. Ant just isn't going to want to get swept. As much as I do criticize him, he's one of the more competitive guys in the league, one of the more competitive guys still in the playoffs. He's due for a game where he just takes over. He's slowly been working back over the past couple to score a little bit more than he's been scoring over the past 7 or 8. But I think he's going to carry the Wolves to a win tonight. I think we see him go for like 35. He's been knocking at the door on it for this entire series now and the back half of that last series. So I think he figures it out. I think we see a mid-30 point game from him. And his line sitting at 27.5 I think is pretty generous because there's a very good chance he scores 28, 29, and they don't win. Regardless, we still cover in that scenario. So that is my 5 NBA bets. I'll read them off for TikTok because they're not on the screen for y'all. Wolves money line. Wolves Mavs over 210.5. Naz Reid over 12.5. Kyle Anderson over 5.5, and Edwards over 27.5 at plus 105. All right, moving on to 2 WNBA picks here. I have the Sparks plus 5.5 against the Fever. They did lose to the Fever the other night by 5, I believe, or 6. Outside of beating the Sparks, though, the Fever just have gotten blown out like every single game. They haven't done much productive at all on the season with Caitlin Clark. The only game that they were competitive in was the one that they won against the Sparks. I think the spread is a little bit too big because of the Caitlin Clark hype, and they already beat this team. They should be able to beat this team again in the Sparks. And honestly, I think that they are going to struggle against the Sparks the second time around. I know this one's at home, but regardless, the Sparks are just not bad enough where they're going to be able to lose back-to-back games by big spreads against the Fever. Do I think the Fever should be favored in this game? Yeah, I think it should be like 1.5 to 2.5 points. I don't think they should be favored by 5.5 points as a team that's 1-6 overall in the season. So, regardless, we are taking the Sparks plus 5.5. Next game here, go with the Mercury and the Sun over 165.5. Both teams are scoring very well this season in the high 80s. The Sun have been pretty solid on defense as well, but the Mercury have not been. They haven't had Brittany Griner. They haven't had any rim protection. Although they're scoring the ball a ton, they haven't been able to play much defense. The Mercury will probably have to shoot threes to catch up in this game. The Sun are undefeated. They're 5-0. They look to continue that dominance in the season so far here against the Mercury. And overall, I went and I looked at this, how great defense they're playing, how great offense they're playing. And I saw this game being like 171, 172. And then I looked at the line, saw it was 7 points under that, and I'm like, yeah, I have to take that. So over 165.5 for Mercury and Sun. So those are my 2 WNBA picks there. Sparks plus 5.5, Mercury Sun over 165.5. All right, now 3 MLB picks before we move on to our best bets. First one here, Marlins Padres over 7.5. 2 mediocre pitchers on the mound. Luzardo from Miami, he's honestly been pretty shitty this year. He has like a mid-4 ERA. He was supposed to be way better. I'm pretty sure he was their opening day starter this year. He has the name recognition, so I think that's one of the reasons why this line is so low at 7.5. And Waldron's out there for the Padres. He has an almost 5 ERA. Also, neither of these guys have been outright horrible this season, but neither of them have been good. Hoping we see a lot more hitting from both of these teams today, and the line's so low at 7.5, I have to take it. So, moving on here to, sorry for not pulling that down, YouTube, my bad. Okay, next one here, Cubs Brewers under 7.5. The Cubs are just deep slumping right now. They cannot hit the ball at all. Both teams have solid pitchers on the mound. The Cubs pitching has been phenomenal this whole time where they haven't been able to hit. But Brown is up for the Cubs. He has a 3.2 ERA. Peralta is up for the Brewers, 3.81 ERA. 2 good pitchers. One team that just absolutely cannot score at all. I think we see something like a 3-1, 4-1 Brewers win here. So we'll take under 7.5 pretty confidently in that game. Cubs Brewers. And then last of our 10 bets here, got Cardinals money line plus 105 against the Reds. Both these teams have good pitchers on the mound, Gibson and Abbott. The Cardinals are the hottest they've been all season, though. They're 10-3 in their last 13 games. The Cardinals seem to hit better with their best pitchers on the mound, which is kind of the opposite of what the Reds have had so far this season. So I think we see the Cardinals pull off the upset in Great American Ballpark today. So let me recap those MLB picks one more time for everybody on TikTok. Marlins, Padres over 7.5. Cubs, Brewers under 7.5. Cardinals money line plus 105. WNBA picks: Sparks plus 5.5. Mercury Sun over 165.5. And then NBA picks: Timberwolves money line, Wolves Mavs over 210.5. Naz Reid over 12.5. Kyle Anderson over 5.5. Ant Edwards over 27.5 at plus 105. So if you are new to the show, I give my 10 picks for the day, and then I live on the show pick my favorite 3 of those. I don't plan those ahead of time. Once I just get here, I talk about them out loud to you guys, and I figure out in my head which are my favorite 3. And then those are the ones that we rock with towards our record. Everybody on YouTube, you could see the total best bets, 22 and 23. Those are our record on our 3 picks that we pick at the end of every episode. This week we are 1 and 2 because we went 1 and 2 yesterday. So here we go. First pick here, I'm going to go with Ant over 27.5 at plus 105. I think he covers this pretty fairly easily. There's no way that he gets shut down in this final game. I think we see the Mavs let a little bit off the gas, especially on the defensive end. We know they're going to score points, so that's why we're taking the over 2. That's not one of my best bets, but that's why we're taking the over 2, because we know the Mavs are going to be able to score points. Are they going to be able to stay locked in defensively, though? We know that they're a great defensive team, or they have been here in the playoffs, but historically they haven't been the best defensive team. Are they going to be able to be locked in a series where they're up 3-0? We don't know. That's unsure. So I'm going to go with Edwards over 27.5 plus 105. Next one here, I'm going to go with Mercury Sun over 165.5. Like I said, when I did my math of what I thought this game was going to be about, it's about 171, 172. And I was just so far ahead of the 165.5 that they have as the line. So I felt obligated to go with the Mercury Sun 165.5. So that is my second one. And then we'll go with, let's go with, I'm stuck between a couple here. Man, this is tough. I'm going to go with Naz Reid over 12.5. He's covered every single game in the series. 17 points per game in this series. And like I said, I think him stretching the floor and having better shooting ability than the bigs that he's going to be guarded by, most likely Cat and Gobert defensively. I think he'll be all right shooting his threes and being able to get second chance points off rebounds. And his line is set at 12.5. So my 3 best bets for the day: Naz Reid over 12.5. Anthony Edwards over 27.5 at plus 105, and Mercury Sun over 165.5. Thanks everybody for joining today. Once again, shout out to Bet Openly for the best odds in the game. Sign up with Bet Openly using the link in the description on YouTube. Deposit $50 and DM it to me, a screenshot on Twitter at JReidNBA, JREIDNBA on Twitter, and I'll be able to enter you into a giveaway for some cash. I'll be back tomorrow, same time as always, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. 11 a.m. Pacific, giving you 10 more bets, cutting it down to my 3 best bets, and recapping how we did on our bets today.